All right, good evening, my friends. My name is Yara Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are very excited to be here at the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history to celebrate one of the living greats, Jamaica Kincaid. Jamaica Kincaid has been taught probably to every single one of us at school, if we're lucky, if we have appropriate and good teachers. Um, and however you came to find her work, you know that it is a blessing. She is the author of so many books, and you can peruse them outside. But the book that we are here to celebrate tonight is her new book that she has created with Carol Walker. Carol Walker, who is one of America's greatest visual artists, who has illustrated each entry with provocative, brilliant, enthralling, many layered watercolors, which you can see behind me. And the book is called An Encyclopedia of Gardening for Colored Children. This book reflects Ms. Kincaid's interest in plants, in spirituality, and all kinds of stories from different people. Jamaica Kincaid was born in St. John's, Antigua. Her books include At the Bottom of the River, Annie John, Lucy, The Autobiography of My Mother, My Brother, Mr. Potter, and See You Now Then. She teaches at Harvard University and lives in Vermont. She is, of course, an avid gardener, and many of her beautiful books are also about gardening. She's joined tonight by Tiphanie Yanique, who is the author of the award-winning novels Land of Love and Drowning and Monster in the Middle, as well as the poetry collection Life. Winner of the 2014 Center for Fiction First Novel Award and the National Book Foundation 5 Under 35 honoree. She has also received a Rona Jaffe Award and a Fulbright Scholarship. Her short fiction has been published through The New Yorker and anthologized in Best American Short Stories 2020. Originally from the Virgin Islands, she now lives in Atlanta, where she is a professor at Emory University. So we're very lucky to have these two in conversation. We're very grateful to some of you may have planned to be here with us in May, and we had to reschedule, and so we're glad that you are here tonight. If this is your final time to be with us. And thank you, as always, to the people from our Avenue Research Library who made this partnership possible. We're very grateful to the staff, to volunteers, and everyone who makes this beautiful space successful. So let's put our hands together and welcome Jamaica Kincaid.
Thank you guys all for coming and fighting Atlanta traffic. We're so happy to have you. Some of you have come from other states. So other states? Can you believe that? Alexis Pauline Gums, for example, in the front row. So we're so glad to have you here. I'm so pleased to be here to talk with you, Jamaica, about this brilliant, beautiful book. What we're going to do this evening is Jamaica and I are going to have a conversation. I'm going to ask Jamaica to read certain passages, and then we'll open it up for questions to everyone here, okay? But Jamaica, I want to start off by asking you about the title of this book. And the title is An Encyclopedia of Gardening for Colored Children. So can you talk about that?
Yes, well, it actually started when I used to read the book review of the New York Times a very long time ago. I don't read it anymore because it's gotten completely stupid. I think his name is Chris Jackson. publisher, and the whole theme of the article was there weren't enough books published for children of color. But when I read that, I thought, well, I'll write a book for colored children, because my reading of children of color, I didn't like the way the words were arranged. Children of color. What color are children? What color could this book be? It would only be for colored children. On the other hand, all children are colored. The first way of phrasing it, children of color, leaves out children you would call white. You see, and that was the whole point, is that most books are written for these other children, and the rest of the colored children, the rest of the children were color. Those children were no color. They were white. White apparently isn't a color. And so I didn't like that. I thought I'd write a book for colored children, because children are one color or another, unless they're spectral. I mean, the first person I asked to illustrate it, I won't say his name. He was going to. He and I had planned to write a book, to do a children's book together. It's a wonderful illustrated children's book. But it was also at a time of upheaval and irritation in the publishing industry about books written by people, black, brown, people who look more or less like us in the room here. And I assume people who might, I always assume people who might appear to be white don't like to be described as white. It's a very it's not a very nice word. If you could find it, it brands you as being involved in something dark, so and evil. So anyway, his agent said that it wouldn't be good for his career, and he obeyed her for some reason. So I sat around for years with this project. I bought an enormous book called a book that had blank pages, but it was very big, about 4 times the size of this. And the title of the book was Photographs I Have Seen. But when you opened it, all the pages were blank. And I liked that about it. So I began to fill it up with the alphabet. And I can't draw, so I just would scribble. And I thought if I made the letters large and then, made them odd, that was drawing. So that's how it started. But I couldn't think of anyone really I wanted to do it. And one day I called up my friend, I wrote to my friend Hilton Owls, the great Hilton Owls. I said, Hilton, because he's always telling me stories of all the wonderful people he's had dinner with or something. And I remember him once telling me he had Thanksgiving with Kyra Walker, and it was all vegetarian. I thought it was quite funny. So I said to him, well, can you introduce me to Kyra Walker? I would like to ask you to do this book. On the other hand, well, he did. But I was certain she would say no. So I wrote her, and I said, I know this is beneath you, but I was wondering if you would consider it. And she wrote back right away. But since I was so certain she would say no, I wrote back right away and said, I'm so sorry I offended you. She wrote back right away and said, I said yes. And so it began. She said, one thing she said, I don't know anything about botanical drawings. I said I don't know anything about botany either. I only know about the garden and things like that. Anyway, I would send her things, and then she would send back some beautiful thing and say, "I don't know if this is," and I know this is incredibly great, and we did it rather, once it got going, we did it rather quickly. So that's how it came about, but also the idea of gardening. Well, I love gardening, but it's not gardening in the way you would think about it. It's a form of writing from gardening. It was through, for instance, gardening that I became deeply involved for years with Thomas Jefferson. And he's in here, actually. If you come to it, shall I tell you how he? All right. Well, there is a plant called Jeffersonia diffila. I think that's DYPH. Leaf, and the D would mean that it's two. It's DY. This is my Latin thing. It's DY, not DI. I think DI would be more a division. But the leaf is not divided. It's the same one leaf, but it's like this on the stem, but it's one leaf. And its common name is twin leaf. I don't think it grows here. It would be more in the Virginia forest. You're shaking your head, you know it.
Yeah, it's not this far south.
It's not this far south.
Yeah.
It's one of those things called the spring ephemerals, spring flowers that appear and then they disappear as if they were never there, which is another attribute, I think, of his character. So this common name is twin leaf, and it's beautiful. Self-sows really quite easily. And I was looking at it and thinking that its Latin name is Jeffersonia diffila, meaning it's named after Thomas Jefferson, named after him by one of his friends. And then the common name of it was twin leaf. And as I continued to look at the plant, it reminded me so much of the character of this person who could write so eloquently about and truthfully about freedom and yet own people. So I began to think about that. It wasn't the first time I'd made these connections, though I think that revelation, and I'll call it a revelation, because it's what I do in the garden. I plant things, but then I'll be reading them or writing about them in some way in my head. But that revelation led me to somehow the doctrine of signature, which is there anyone in the room? The doctrine of signature? Well, before doctors were involved in science, they were botanists, and they had to know plants, and they treated people with plants. And it's universal, this idea of signature and plants. All people seem to make this association. That if a plant looks like a part of the body, you use that plant to treat the disease of the body. So I don't know if you know something called the boat sets. They're Jopai weed in that family. Well, their leaves, and there are two separate leaves, but they grow like this together up the stem of the plant. And so they're called the bone sets, and they're used to set bones. Or pulmonaria, lungworm was used to treat lung diseases because the leaves are spotted, like we think lung diseases. So that from Jeffersonian led me to the doctrine of symmetry. For a long time, I was involved in the doctrine of symmetry. I cannot tell you how entertaining and wonderful it was, and how annoyed my family was because I was always speaking Latin to them. So I tend to learn things, approach new things the way I did as a child. And I should tell you, just as another segue, I truly believe that your whole life is up to your seventh year. I mean, some people, I will allow some people 9 or 10. But then after that, you just repeat everything. You could live to be Methuselah, and you just do what you do sometime between when you were born and then you turned 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. And I'm seating myself. So when I'm gardening, or when I'm writing, or when I'm reading, I am the person I was when I was 7, I say. So when I thought of writing this book, I thought I would write a book that I would like to read as a child. And so this is how it came about. It has, some people will say, oh, a child, it's too sophisticated for a child, or it's too hard for a child. But I think it's because the age we live in now, we have infantilized children. So you have children watching this incredibly stupid thing called Bluey. And then we have parents writing articles about Bluey. It's just so stupid.
I mean, I have to say, my 8-year-old is reading the book right now as we're like at this very moment.
Yes, yes.
He's doing okay.
That was the sort of child, yes. But that was the sort of child I was. I wanted to read things that would take me. I hated children's books, so I could read them in a second. Though I did like the very racist enlightening book about nodding. And even worse, my favorite was Garden.
Jamaica, I actually have a question for you that maybe is connected to this idea of childhood. I was going to ask it later, but you're taking us on a journey. So I'm like, I want to ask this now. I was recently at the Brooklyn Caribbean Lit Festival in New York, in Brooklyn. And someone asked me a question about psychotherapy. And if I thought that psychotherapy was useful for people who are under the yokes of colonialism, people who are in the wake of slavery, what I thought about that. And it seems to me like you are doing a lot in your whole, in all of your work, not only in this book, to think through childhood and to interrogate childhood, to also honor childhood. I was thinking in particular of one of my favorite sections is the one about the kitchen garden, which is the letter K. And I wondered, well, first I wondered if you could read that section for us.
Of course.
And then I'll ask you the specific question, which is like, what do you think about psychotherapy? I mean, what do you think? Do you think that we need it? And if you do we need it in a different way, perhaps, as people who are formerly or currently colonized? But the kitchen one is interesting because of the way it thinks through the importance of interiority. and meditation. So yeah, it would be that.
First of all, just want to say about psychiatry. Have they read Franz Fanon? Who was a complicated person. There's actually a very great biography just recently published about him. It's fantastic. I'm not remembering the name of it, but it was published last year. It's really good. He was a psychiatrist. And actually, a lot of the Caribbean, French, Franco-Caribbean writers are very interested in the
psychoanalysis.
Yes, and the unconscious. It's a very strange thing. And also in the Franco-Caribbean, the two islands, the men are from Martinique and the women are from Guadeloupe, and no one can explain it to me. There is an explanation, but
there's going to be a social scientist who
I wish they would tell me,
down.
because I don't have the time. It's one of those questions I wonder why is that so. But a psychiatrist, I see one all the time. I think it should be a birthright. It's not. I mean, black people have an unconscious, subconscious, like everybody. Black people are people. So yes, you should have said. And by the way, yes, Dr. Non's book.
Right. I should have just given them the name of my therapist.
No. It should be a birthright. There are two things I think should be a birthright, a psychiatrist. But for Americans, a birthright should be everyone born east of the Mississippi should have a ticket to go west, particularly taking the Lewis and Clark route, which is another one of my you'd like to lecture. And that also came about because of the garden, Lewis and Clark. So the kitchen garden, you will want me to read that, please. K is for the kitchen garden. The kitchen garden is the same thing as the vegetable garden, in which we grow food such as zucchini, pumpkin, tomato, watermelon, collards, kale, spinach, carrots, beets, beans, peas. But when we say we have a kitchen garden or a vegetable garden, it is our way of reminding ourselves that we have and can afford to have another garden, one that is full of trees and flowers arranged in areas divided by pathways and walls, and the manipulation of water into shapes that ordinarily would be found on a walk in the wilderness, ponds, lakes, waterfalls, and statues, grottos, and even sometimes making seating arrangements solely to view other landscapes that are natural and far away from the garden in which we are sitting. That garden, the kitchen garden, that garden, the other garden that is not the kitchen garden, that garden feeds and nourishes our souls and inspires us to think about things, the little doubts we harbor deep inside ourselves, our hatreds of others, our love of others, the many ways in which we can destroy and create the world and live with the consequences. In that other garden, we grow mostly plants that are pleasing to the eye, roses, daffodils, and the nose, roses. In the Edenic creation story, the tree of life, which is in the kitchen vegetable garden, appears before the tree of knowledge. And the Lord God caused to grow every tree that was pleasing to the sight and good for food, with the tree of life in the middle of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and bad. My an interpretation of that passage in the Bible is the tree of life is agriculture and the tree of knowledge is horticulture. And in every civilization or groups of people, they first grow food to eat. And when they have enough, when they're rich or having an excess of food, they start to grow things that are pleasing to them. Roses, a little rose, a little geranium, well, geranium can be used as medicine. Sunflowers, oh no, that can be used. Yes, the national flower of Ukraine is the sunflower, and the sunflower is not native to anywhere near Ukraine. It's native to native people in Arizona and that part of the world. And how they got the sunflower is quite an interesting story, perhaps involving the only nearly good thing Stalin ever did was forcing them to grow sunflowers. It's nourishing. But yeah, the kitchen garden is a luxury that you have. You grow an heirloom tomato. It probably costs you about $5 by the time you get it organic and whereas if you were really in need of the tomato, you would just grow a lot of it, pulp it up, freeze it, and be done with it.
Yeah, I was so interested in this idea that the luxury of the other garden that allows you to reflect on your hatreds and your loves, allows you to think about it, that is a luxury. But it's also, therapists are expensive, for example. So sometimes even psychotherapy is also a luxury. So I was just thinking that through too, like the ways in which first you have to nourish yourself and get your basic needs filled, and then you get to be able to think about beauty and cultivate your inner life. Whereas, and that's part of how we've been oppressed in many ways, is by not being given the time, the space,
not allowed
to cultivate our inner lives. Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, the very purpose of dominating someone, you cannot do it lightly. If you start out only wanting to do it a little bit, eventually you want to do it completely. A good example of occurs to me is in incidents in the life of a slave girl. Early on in it, the early chapters, the narrator's grandmother has a talent for making biscuits or something, and like baking. And she thought, well, I'll bake my biscuits and I'll sell them. And that way maybe I can free one of my children. But she could only do that during the time she should be asleep at nights. She could only do it at nights. Even so, she had to ask permission to interrupt her own sleep so she could make these biscuits. Even her sleep wasn't her own. That is the point of owning someone. And of course, the person who owns someone never seems to reflect on the damage to themselves. But who did reflect on the damage? Old Thomas Jefferson. In his book, Notes on Virginia, which is sometimes when I teach it as a creation story, because it begins with him carving out Virginia out of the wilderness. He delineates the lines. It's very much like and saw that it was good, very much about it. And he names the rivers and he names the law. He does all sorts of things that you would find very much in the first parts of Genesis. Then, what chapter is it? 24 or something? He has a chapter called Manners, and it's all about, it's only a page and a half, Manners, but it's all about the effect of slavery on your character. He calls it Manners. You should read it.
I feel like it's telling that it's only a page and a half. I
Oh,
feel like
well,
a whole book on.
yeah, but in a way, that's the beauty of it, because if it was a page and a half, it wouldn't be so powerful. But he condenses it into this page and a half. You could read it over and over and just see so much into this different person, this twin leaf person.
Yeah.
So yes, the kitchen garden is well, just the word, you have to have a kitchen. Not everybody has a kitchen. I grew up basically outside, and my mother didn't really have a kitchen. She had a little place where she cooked our food in a coal pot. I'm so much older than you. I don't think I grew up with coal pots.
I did grow up with coal pots. Absolutely. Yeah. You grew up with coal pots too? Yeah.
Anybody else grew up with coal pots?
Yes. Yeah. Coal pots still exist in the Caribbean. Yeah.
I collect them because there's one woman in Antigua who makes them, and her children refuses to learn how to do it. They're all doing something else. So every time I go to Antigua, I bring back one because I don't know when there will be any more.
You will be the one that people have to come to get their coal pots.
Yes, that's right. In the last years of my life, I will be a coal pot
purveyor of coal pots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had another section in Jamaica that I wanted to point out.
Is this of interest to you so far?
They adore you. That's why they're here. So in the whole book, you're doing this. I'm going to say Adamic, but that's not correct. This sort of Old Testament thing of like naming. And you also are doing it now, actually, for us too on stage.
Yes.
Talking through the names. You like name the parts, you name the plants, but then you also name like particular people in history. But then you do this sort of meta thing where you also talk about those people doing the naming, like you just did with Jefferson.
Yes.
And it dawned on me that a part of what this, like the control that people have to name something, the power of naming is such a vital power. I mean, it's such a pervasive power, and it has such like long-term effects. I think about even as a mother, like naming my children, it's like the first magic that a parent, like is the obia that you do on your child, you name them and then they have to kind of like live up to that somehow. So I was really interested in naming as well, clearly it's a colonial tool to colonize, but I wondered about it as a decolonial tool to maybe resist colonization. And I have to just pause to give a little plug to the Decolonial Symposium that that's going to be hosted at Emory University and Clark Atlanta University next week from the 19th to the 21st. Please come out. There's flyers or little cards at the front that we'll be talking a lot about naming. But I was in particular interested in the section about water, where you name the rivers of Eden.
Yes.
Because I have to say, I grew up very religious. I grew up Catholic, and I don't remember that the rivers of Eden had these 4 particular names, and I found them really fascinating. And also because I think about water in particular thinking about water in response to colonialism, like Christina Sharp's idea of being in the wake, but also the ways that I personally think as a Caribbean person that water is freeing, water is liberatory. So I just was interested in the water section a lot. It was actually my favorite section. So I wonder if you could read that section for us.
Sure. I would say before, first of all, not to be, not to, don't misinterpret this, but Catholics don't seem to read the Bible.
No, it's true. Because why are you guys? Why?
I have a friend, and we travel together, and she's a Catholic. She goes to Mass every, and I go with her. I've been to Mass with her in India and all over the world just to see how it's done, and how it was very quick, and the priest says all sorts of things, and lots of so I'll say something to her, and she'll say, "I suppose in the Bible." And she says, "Oh, I've never read the Bible."
Exactly.
And it leads to something that, which is why, just to digress, which is why all these ridiculous conservatives have converted to Confucianism, because it has in it an authoritarianism. There's a central figure, and those rules are set, and you repeat them. And one of the big controversies or big problem with the Reformation was the printing of the Bible, because it meant that ordinary people could have the Bible and they could interpret it however they wanted. It didn't have to go to one central person. People were burned for reading the Bible. Of course, it did lead to this problem of all these Puritans or these different faiths getting away from prosecution in England and coming to America and ruining the lives of the people who are already here. So maybe the Bible distributed to everybody in England wasn't such a good idea. If you were a Yanapi or a Navajo, you know. It's the thing. I was saying to my friend yesterday, my friend Ian Fraser, I think people can only do a good thing for a short period of time. And then afterwards, it's too hard to be good. So then we just get all, got to not only read the Bible, 10 of us have to read the Bible completely differently and believe that our way of reading it is the right one. And we must kill the others who don't agree with the way we read it. That's, but the river, so it was another way of saying that someone had said to me that I wrote this based on the Judaic, Christian, and I think Islam, the Abraham people, the Abrahamic codes, yes, who don't like each other's. How surprising! And then there were other creation myths. Well, I don't know them. This is the one I know, and so this is the way I approach the garden. The naming of things in the Bible is so significant that first of all, I want to give you my lecture on this now. First of all, the garden is created, the earth is created, the world, the earth, not the world. And I have this other theory that the earth is a planet and the world is a social invention. We make the world. The planet is indifferent to what we do in the world. But in any case, the earth that is made in the Bible, this particular sentence, and saw that it was good. And for a long time, I thought, well, then it must mean that there are other
Not good.
They were not good.
Yeah.
But nobody tells us. So where are they? Floating around. So that was one thing that was a puzzle. You can see why I write so little and the books are so tiny. This is sort of that for a long time. And then, so clearly the person who makes this earth and saw that it was good and did all sorts of things rested on the seventh day. And incidentally, in those first 7 days, he made, I use generic, can be they. I'm not particularly interested in God's sexual orientation. Oh. But let's see. It's a very lonely existence, and so he makes a man and a woman in his own image. It says so. People don't talk about it, but the creation of the humans, they were man and woman in his image. So God is a they too. It's not. I'm not being woke, though I very much like. Follow me, woke every time. But then he quickly goes on to make his companion Adam, and he sees Adam is alone. Those few beginnings, it's all very lonely. It's beautiful, but it's very lonely. God is lonely, makes a friend. Friend is lonely, puts the friends to sleep, takes a rib, makes a companion. They're walking around, they're doing all sorts of things, and then, of course, comes the great fall. But as again, I think about the other things that were not good. So I came to see that there's this conversation. Well, there's the agriculture and horticulture, and then there's this conversation of well, what's all this? And so the privilege of naming things is given to Adam. Mm-hmm. But I've always had the sneaky feeling that God really laughs at him because it's not necessarily the names that God gave the things that he named. He might have given them other names, and secretly behind Adam's back is laughing when Adam says, "That's a giraffe." God's thinking, "No, it's but it's very funny, and you can really see how amusing it is if you read Paradise Lost. But the question of water, you have to have water, and for me, the naming is incredible because, well, I'll go back to that. The naming is incredible, asking Adam to name things, because it is how Adam gets to know things. He knows something, what this is called, what that is called. He does not yet know himself. Mm-hmm. See, you thought you were coming to a reading, but you're
a few things to read, actually.
No, but I have
You're in rebellion to my request.
That's what I'm going to do. I have to explain it. And then he knows the names of all these things. And but he doesn't know himself yet. But then you come to something that is instrumental in a garden and almost always recurs in a garden: water. And the way the rivers are described, they form a quadrant. A quadrant is, to this day, a universal design in a garden. There will be many takes on it, but a quadrant, dividing it into four, is just, and so that to me is the first example of design in the Bible. And I've written about it, design. Nothing else is designed quite that way. The earth is created, things are created, but the design of the garden is the first instance of design. And then I can have a quarrel with myself about the difference between design and creating. Is design purposeful and creating sort of
Chaotic.
yes, and more spontaneous, more spontaneous, more in your mind's eye, more you decide. It's when when the individual decides, my creation is fine, I see it's good. But with design, it has a pre-purpose. When you design something, you have a purpose for it. And I thought that this is the beginning of thinking in this way. So let me read it to you. A river issues from Eden to water the garden, and it then divides and becomes 4 branches. That's the quadrant. Water is essential to all plants growing in the garden, for it helps the plant cells take in food and distributes nutrients to the plant's various parts, such as leaves and roots. It is especially important in helping seeds to germinate. When there is an abundance of water in the garden, it is often put to decorative use, such as in a fountain or a bird bath. The 4 branches of the river in Eden intersect and form quadrants, perhaps the first example of design in the garden. The names of the rivers of Eden are Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates. And of course, Tigris and Euphrates is in Iraq.
So we still have those names.
We still have those names, which also leads me to think, because Abraham comes from, I think he comes from, where was he? Somewhere there in Iraq, near the.
Well, I'm Catholic, so I wouldn't know.
Yes.
Jamaica, I have one more question. I actually have a bunch of questions, but I'm just going to ask one more, and then I'm going to see if the audience has any questions. So, my question is about motherhood. I know, right? Here we go. Unlike the big question for last. So, personally, when people ask me as a writer, like, who are my forebearers, my foremothers, I say all the time without fail, Jamaica Kincaid is my mama. Because I write, I feel like I write within your legacy. So but your work is also a lot about mothering. Historically, the scholars who write about your work are always thinking about the role of the mother in your work. But now you are not only a mother yourself, you're a grandmother, and you're writing children's books, or at least things that look like children's books. So I guess I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about what that transition has been like for you, to go from someone who was writing a lot about the relationship you have with your own mother to now really considering what it is to be not only a mother but a grandmother. Thinking about motherhood in maybe the other direction.
I don't think I somehow managed it. I never thought of myself so much as being a mother in the way people, think about it. I thought I was also a pastor, so I would send them off to school and then stay in a little room and write the last 3 sentences before I had to go meet the school bus. So I don't know, and I think they have, especially my daughter has great issues with my expecting her to take care of of herself as, well, now here are your clothes. But on the other hand, I was the sort of mother who would get up early, run, rush home, make their breakfast, warm their clothes in the dryer, build a little fire in the fireplace so they could eat in front of it. But still, they find me unsatisfactory.
I feel like it's all children with their mothers just for the record.
And I think it is right. Life is so difficult that why did you bring me into this world and not make it perfect? So I did teach them to make me a martini. Bring it to the garden. And then they had one of those horrid lectures at school that says, kids, don't smoke, don't drink, or whatever. And decided I was an alcoholic, so I stopped.
I have to say, I have all plans to teach my children how to make a very good rum and coke. They can bring it to me.
Yes, it's just a very children. It's wonderful.
I mean, I knew how to make a rum and coke when I was about 10, so it was a good skill. You know?
It's wonderful, and to give someone.
And look, I'm a professor now. I did okay.
There is one thing I would like to read. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and if you would like to read, and then you guys prepare your questions, because after Jamaica reads, we'll open it up to the audience.
I did want to read this one thing, there are two things in it that I find, many things that are interesting. But this is about the elm, the American elm tree, and its Latin name is ulmus. U is for ulmus, the botanical name for the elm tree. The elm is a large tree growing up to a height of 100 feet and with an equally enormous spread, found mainly in temperate and cooler climates in Central Asia, North America, and Europe. Its fame as a tree is widely celebrated in France, Greece, and Rome. It was the Romans who named the elm ulmus. The North American elm, Ulmus americana, the state tree of Massachusetts and North Dakota, because of its impressive, elegant stature, was widely used to make the new American nation appear serious and old. It provided shade for the sidewalks of town streets. In our American narrative, the American elm is portrayed by the British American painter Benjamin West. The painting titled Penn's Treaty with the Indians shows William Penn, a founder of Pennsylvania, then a colony of England, entering into a treaty with the Lenape. The treaty used the words openness, love, and one flesh and blood. The Lenape, taking him at his word, responded with the words, we will live in love with William Penn and his children while the sun, moon, and stars endure. William Penn is long dead, and the Lenape were dispossessed of their ancestral lands and made to seem strangers and wanderers in a world that wished and worked toward their complete disappearance. And yet, of the 50 individual states that altogether make up the United States of America, 26 of them bear the names of indigenous people like the Lenape, and they are Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Connecticut, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Mexico, North and South Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Wisconsin, Wyoming. The American elm is more or less extinct, having suffered from a blight that came from another part of the temperate region of the earth. The point had to be taken out because the page got too long, but my interpretation of the American elm getting sick and dying is that it felt betrayed by the promise that was made under its spreading. branches. So that's, I wanted to read that. And now you can ask me.
Thank you so much, Jamaica. The microphone is up here, so since we're recording, please do come to the microphone.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to express gratitude for all of you this evening that we're able to share time and space together before I ask my question. And thank you both for hosting this talk. It's been awesome. When your discussion in the beginning about children being made into different races, it reminded me of Dr. Nadira Shahor-Kevorkian, a Palestinian author who writes about children being made and unmade in a book called Incarcerated Childhood, The Politics of Unchilding. And I just wanted to share that as a book if anyone would be interested in that. But in our discussion about naming, it reminded me of the power of sound. And I wanted to know, in your gardening, do you sing or talk to your plants and notice that makes a difference in their flourishing and abundance?
Oh, yes. It's hard for me to think I talk to them in the way of talking, but there's definitely a conversation. And we are in sympathy with each other. One particular plant I have, a hibiscus mosquitotus. It's a Native American plant. It's hibiscus that's hardy. It self-sows all the time. I have so many. It's as if it knows that I come from a place where I sow hibiscus all the time. And sometimes, I mean, it can be very annoying. It will put itself in a place where I don't want it to be, and so I'll get very annoyed and throw it out. And one day there was one that I wanted to throw out because it had planted itself somewhere that wasn't meant to be, but I forgot, and it grew up and turned out to be a pure white flowered one, which is very rare. Usually they're pink with a red center, or white, pale pink, or just plain pink. They're almost never white. It's very, very rare. And so that was another conversation to have with, because I meant to toss him out.
He was talking back to you.
I was talking about, saying, see, you don't have to. The other thing is my plants tend to be taller than the literature. And so therefore, they look like me, slightly bent. That is just, I'm not making this up. My friends come to my garden and we bought the same plants, same time. Theirs are a natural height. Mine is taller and crooked. Yeah, there are all sorts of things in my garden that I can see that we speak. It's not necessarily with the sort of words we are using, but it's always something going on. And I'll go out at around 6 o'clock or so, sometimes with a glass of wine, and just walk around and look at them. And I haven't said a thing, but there must be, until you said this, and I thought of it as talking. But there must be something, because it's a very, there is, this conversation or this debate of whether plants communicate or whether trees are sentient. Oh, there's a terrible conversation going on about sentience in plants, as if we know. I mean, really, at this point, I would happily change all of us into plants because they do less harm to each other and to the world than we do. And the other thing, the next time you hear someone say, "Oh, that's invasive," say to them, "More invasive than human beings." So, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your question and for the notes about the author that you mentioned. Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you very much, because with this book you have provided, I'm sure, decades upon decades of conversations in children's literature scholarship. We're already up and down lots of different places saying, is it a children's book? Is it a book for children? Is it a picture book? Is it an illustrated text? And I think part of what you said earlier is coming into conversation with some of those questions. So I wanted to ask, how do you think we can balance out in not trying to infantilize texts for children or children's books?
What did you say?
Infantilize.
No children.
Yeah. How do you balance that though with a lot of work that intentionally adultifies, or the adultification of children in different spaces? So where's the balance? I mean, we could publish in the margin, but it might not have the same sustainability as in the mainstream. But the mainstream says that a lot of the texts that are for children need to be simplified in language, and maybe not as long as some of what you have in this particular book. Where's the balance? How do you find the balance?
Well, there is no balance in knowledge. A child needs knowledge. When I was 7 years of age, my mother bought me for my 7th birthday a concise Oxford dictionary. And it was because I was reading things and was always asking, why is it mean? And I would look it up. I read it as a book. Get a child a dictionary, get a child a book. There are all sorts of wonderful books that a child can read. A child can read the Bible. And not as indoctrination, but as reading. I used to read the Bible as a child with Catholic. Over the time and they form ideas about it that I still have to this day. For instance, when I was a child, I decided that the New Testament was full of too many important individuals, what you would now call celebrities. There was always Peter met this person and doubting this, and they were also self-important. And then I would read Paul's letters and came to despise him because he was too harsh. My favorite in that part of the Bible was the book of Revelations, which was terrifying. But then I would read the other parts of the Bible and would find things in it that would make me ponder certain cruelties, certain betrayals, certain things. Why can't a child read Joseph and his coat of many colors, and who becomes the Henry Kissinger of Egypt? Advising the pharaohs, and so on. Why can't a child understand that? They do. It's just that sometimes I feel, especially in this country, we are determined to fill the country with stupid adults,
Right.
and so we start them stupidly.
Yeah.
Because certainly a child can understand the Abraham's first child and sending him away with the promise of, he'll be the ruler of great nations. But no, actually, you're sending a child out into the wilderness to die. Not so great, Father. There are all sorts of this nonsense of this young adult literature. It's just utter nonsense. It's just I don't even know what to do with it, except if you want to say, oh, once again, capitalism ruins everything because it's just another part of the publishing industry to make money. And then, what I don't understand is what people with money do with it. You had a man who had so much money, he built a boat. A bridge had to be dismantled so it could be launched. Why? And then the boat had to have a supporting boat. What do you do with such a thing? There's no end to it. Life is hard. That's what the thing about being a mother. And I don't mean life is hard in that you don't have enough money for groceries and inflation and so on. Just the sheer weight of being you is so impossible. You get out of bed in the morning and you're stuck with you. And it's, when you make a decision, it turns out to be the wrong decision, but then you might have in you a sense of honor. And so this is the wrong decision, but if I don't keep doing it, this will be hurt, that will be destroyed. These are the kinds of things that a child should be acquainted with, not gluey. When your parents have to write an article so they can buy more glue.
We have time for one more question.
Oh, don't go. You'll get your time.
Quick question. Quick question. Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening. My question is one of levity. You spoke candidly about how similar Jefferson was to the twin leaf and how plants can possess the character of people. So I was just curious if you have a particular flower or plant that you think best personifies you.
Oh gosh. No. I would never bring myself into it in that way. No, I'm no.
I think this is what children are for. They tell you who you are. So probably if you ask for children, they have an answer.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll make it really quick. First of all, thank you so much. I live in Barbados. I've lived there for the past 5 years. And I think about food a lot. And I think about the fact that last month I really did pay $5 for a tomato. Because all of the food is imported.
Right.
But then I think about so I'm stuck on this idea of the luxury of the kitchen garden and how colonialism has extrapolated that across the entire region of the Caribbean. That through all of these different means of economic violence, that it's a luxury to be able to grow and sustain one's own food because so much resources and effort goes into the ornamental of these beautiful gardens and resorts and hotels and the ornamental. And I just wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, the kind of the scale of that. In a way.
I can't rule out the curiosity and desire one will have for something else. That's what I mean about the difficulty of living. I mean, I remember when I was little, I saw an ad in a magazine for Heinz baked beans. It was an English magazine, and I just had never seen anything like it. It was a big slice of pork in it, and I showed it to my mother, and I never liked to eat. In fact, for a long time, and the only way I would eat is if my mother chewed my food first and then gave it to me. Yes. So I said to her, "Oh, look at this. This would be so wonderful." She said, "Well, we can't afford it." And somehow we were able to afford it, and she bought it and opened it, and there was no piece of beef in it. It was just the advertisement. But I longed for it so, while I was surrounded by freshly grown green bananas, which make a wonderful soup, dashing, oranges, all sorts of things that were much more nourishing for me. How is, we say capitalism and so on and so on, but it's not clear to me that any one of us who are victims of capitalism would behave differently if we could make other people victims of it. And that's really hard to take. It's not clear to me that Africans coming over to, the Mediterranean and going down the Irish Channel or whatever those seas are and seeing Europeans would have said, "Hi, nice to see you. We're going home now." It's not clear to me that any of us are capable or have it within us to not do the ruinous thing, we have done. And the utter ignorance that we deliberately impose on ourselves. I was reading an article in the Atlantic not too long ago. I highly recommend you all go look for it. And some stupid person whose mother must have made her watch a movie was writing about how breadfruit was becoming so she could find breadfruit in the supermarket, and how all these new foods were being introduced. And not once did she mention that the breadfruit was something Captain Cook brought back from, I think, Tahiti as food for slaves in the West Indies. The slaves took time to grow their own food, and the planters were worried that they weren't working hard enough because they were growing food to eat. And so they constantly begged for the expanding empire, British Empire, to send food, something that could grow easily in that climate. One of the things I'll leave you with, and this wonderful, I hope you'll enjoy. One of the things I want to leave you with, that in many ways, unlike many of the other people in Europe, perhaps the most of the wealth of the British Empire was in the vegetable kingdom, not like the Spanish, who are interested in minerals, diamonds, and so on. And I have a slight idea why. In the Roman Empire, the mines were in the Iberian Peninsula, so people there were more interested in gold and silver and so on. I mean, if you read the accounts of the conquistadors going down to South America, they were always looking for gold and precious minerals. But it was the British who rearranged the vegetable kingdom. So sent breadfruit to the West Indies, sent something called a pumelo to the West Indies, where it sported into something we now know as the grapefruit. They raided China for tea plantations in India, Sikkim, sent it back to England. It fueled the Industrial Revolution and also changed their culture. So you have this, one of the things, among the many reasons for this book, is to educate a child or a young person or anybody, but a child, into the ways that an innocent plant, the beautiful, innocent cotton, can be turned into a source of evil. I really hope in the end we see that how involved, how deeply implicated we humans are in really muddying and dirtying the world, the innocent world, and then looking at it and deciding, trying to decide, is it sentient? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to the Auburn Research Library for hosting us, and to the staff who stuck with us this evening.
Yes.
And also thank you to Charis Books. Please support the bookstore. Obviously get one of Jamaica's books, but just get a book. We need to support our independent bookstores in Atlanta.
And Tiffany's good. Tiffany's good.
And do exactly what Jamaica and Alexis just said. And ER, do you want to say anything else before we close out?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're gonna help Jamaica make her way into the signing table. If you already have a book, you can line up to the left. If you need to buy a book, line up to the right, please, out at those two tables. And we'll see you up there in just a moment. One more round of applause.